Well, ladies and gentlemen, you tuned in to find out what's going on in Retardanistan, and to be honest, a lot of retarded nonsense, as I'm sure you can imagine. But before we get on to the main video of today, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Just hit the bell icon and subscribe. Anyway, let's get on to the first news story, and this is actually in relation to the Firearms Control Amendment Act. So for those of you who don't know, the government's been trying to push forward a Firearms Control Amendment bill for some time. The idea is basically to strip you of your rights to own a firearm for the purposes of self-defense. Now, AfriForum has been attempting to investigate where this bill seems to come from. Many of us speculated that it came from, well, gun-free South Africa. Well, AfriForum says that a whistleblower testimony to Parliament's ad hoc committee indicated that the Firearms Control Amendment Bill was politically and ideologically driven and does not reflect crime realities. And I'm sure all of you are aghast, the ANC adopting ideology. That's never happened before. Now, a former SAPS official testified that SAPS members allegedly sold firearms earmarked for destruction. We know this too, because there's a book written about it. Now, this individual said that she had raised similar allegations publicly in 2018 and submitted details identifying SAPS members and dealers with no meaningful action taking place. Again, yes, we know. There was a book written about this. Now, AfriForum says that state institutions are the primary source of illegal firearms and not citizen owners, which is in contrary to what Gun-Free South Africa says. Apparently, you and me, we're the ones that are really arming the criminals by owning our firearm. Now, more than 2.2 million firearms are held in state institutions. So the state owns the majority of the firearms in the state. And if they're the ones losing them, it stands to reason it's the state's firearms that are funding the criminal sector. Now, SAPS reportedly lost an estimated 18 to 20,000 firearms over the past decade. That will be why in a lot of the instances when we see these crimes occurring, they're with like R4s, because everybody can just buy an R4. I mean, of course. Now, don't forget that millions of rounds of ammunition have reportedly disappeared with negligible recovery rates. Don't forget that in 2021, a huge cache of ammunition was stolen from the Durban harbour when the riots occurred. It was never recovered. Now, the SANDF and other departments also allegedly failed repeatedly to report firearms losses. And the number of SANDF firearms lost is like astronomical. In fact, one colonel suggested that approximately 9,000 of those firearms had been sold to gangs. Now, in 2021, the government proposed removing self-defense as a valid reason for firearm ownership. And those suggestions are now being revived in terms of the latest legislative changes being attempted by NEDLAC. And I've covered that on numerous videos. You have to look at it and say, why are you trying to ban firearms when you're the ones that are giving the firearms? It's not the law-abiding member of the public. It's you, the state. So if you remove my firearm, you're still going to lose your firearm and give the illegal firearm to the man in the street. I'm just going to be without a firearm, so you're going to make me helpless. That's insidious. Oh, wait a minute. We're talking about the ANC government, who are insidious. Which is exactly why, in the next news article, the Rescue SA Civil Rights Alliance is preparing a legal action against the ANC, alleging corruption, mismanagement, and self-enrichment as key reasons for the legal action against the ANC. Now, the organization says that it aims to hold public officials implicated in corruption to account, and the director said that legal action may be pursued in South Africa's High Court or the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, depending on how the case develops. Now, one of the first focus areas of the case is alleged violations of children's constitutional rights. Now, one of the main directors of the organization said that children are dying from hunger and referenced malnutrition and stunted growth as part of their case. Now, stunted growth in children due to malnutrition affects approximately 27 to 28% of children in South Africa. And that's based on 2024-2025 figures. Now, the organization's board includes legal professionals as senior counsel who will lead the litigation. Now, Rescue SA says that it will also pursue cases against the ANC on a case-by-case basis, with many institutions now seeking to hold the ANC accountable for all of its human rights violations. The Firearms Control Amendment Act is a really good example of that. It's a human rights violation to withdraw my firearm for me while basically giving a firearm to the criminal. Why would you do that? Putting my life at risk. That's the ANC way, isn't it? Anyway, talking of putting your life at risk, one of the things in South Africa that could definitely put your life at risk is the NHI. Now, according to the CEO of ProfMed, they have suggested that the NHI implementation will be delayed by legal challenges for the foreseeable future. And that's because following the signing of the act, everybody basically sued the government for an unworkable act. Now, he said that funding constraints, a shrinking tax base, and unresolved constitutional questions block the implementation of the act. Now, according to the ProfMed CEO, that without a 5% annual growth rate and additional tax revenue, the NHI is not financially viable. People have been saying this for a very long time. But the Department of Health says that the NHI Act is law and implementation work will continue because they don't really care about legal challenges, constitutionality, affordability. I mean, it's an ideological thing. They want to continue with it regardless. Now, core aspects of NHI, including constitutionality, are still under legal scrutiny. But they don't care because it's their pet little ideological project. Now, the Finance Minister, Edon Gonongwana, called for critics and government to settle disputes out of court, but both sides have rejected this because the private sector and anybody with a brain cell says this is unworkable, we can't do it, and the public sector is like, no, we want to do this because that new pot of lucre will be great to loot. Now, healthcare inflation is rising faster than the CPI due to demand, skill shortages, and technological costs, because as I'm sure you can imagine, well, we're losing a lot of our skill abroad because they're like, yeah, I'm not working for the state, they'll never pay me. So they're leaving. So South Africa has too few GPs, too few specialists, and many of the existing specialists and GPs, the doctors' professions, are aging. We are not replacing our doctors, pretty much like everything in the country. We do not replace the skills that we lose, because our government is retarded. Now, the country also has unemployed doctors unable to enter public or private systems. So even when we do replace our doctors, we don't even give them a job. So they leave and they go get a job abroad. This is dumb. But then again, it's South Africa. Now, 15.5% of South Africans had medical aid cover in 2024. 25.3% of households first consult private healthcare despite many lacking cover. With 10% of individuals, that's just 10% of the individuals in the state, saying they'll just pay for their private medical treatment out of their own pocket rather than risk going to a public institution. And that shows you just how little trust people actually have in the state's healthcare. Now, people without medical aid often will just borrow money or sell assets to pay for that private care. They just do not want to opt into the state. So when you make state control of the medical industry mandatory, many individuals are going to revolt against it because they don't want to be involved with state-controlled medical. Now, if only we could just opt out of all state intervention, but we can't. And one of the areas that we definitely can't is when it comes through to the electric supply. Because as you'll know, many of our smelters in this country are closing shop because they say the cost of electricity in South Africa is too high. Now, Gwede Matashe said that electricity support alone will not save smelters. And he said that smelters must improve their operational efficiencies and do more with less, because this is how the government now treats the private sector. We're giving you less, we're charging you more, you should just somehow make do with it. The problem with electricity costs and smelters in this country is that you can import a lot of raw refined minerals, whether it be steel or chrome or whatever, and get it from China. China will process the crap out of this stuff and sell it back to you at a discount. So without actually stopping China from flooding your market with imports, cheap imports from abroad, you destroy your local industry. When you make your local industry even more costly to run by raising the cost of electricity, that will take ferrochrome and many other smelters and it will make them less competitive. They're already dealing with their market being flooded with cheap imports from China, and now you've made their operational costs more expensive due to government monopolies and failures in the government sectors. What do you expect them to do? Well, according to Gwede Matashe, they must do more with less. This isn't like a logical way to treat businesses. Again, it's more retardation from very old ANC morons that should just really retire. Now, Eskom, the government, and the industry are apparently all working on a subsidy-free tariff to assist the industry. Now, the reason for this is apparently Eskom reportedly has excess generation capacity due to improved plant performance. So apparently they can now maybe help the smelting industry, but as Gwede says, you shouldn't rely on it because you should just do more with less. Let's just be clear that the actual issue here isn't really around smelters. Yes, we understand electricity's got very expensive. Yes, we understand that life in South Africa is very difficult because many of our industries are being overtaken by foreign imports from places like China. But it's the government's approach to the private sectors. Just do more with less. Just pay for things like NHI that we can't afford. You do this, you do this. The government seems to treat the private sector almost with a degree of hatred. And it's insidious, because without the private sector, you can't fund the public sector, the government. Remember, it's the taxes of the state that fund the state itself. But it's almost like none of these individuals in the ANC ever went anywhere near an economics book. Now, you know where we can actually see this in practice? You will recall that Ramaphosa said in his 2020 Sona that apparently he would build a brand new University of Science and Innovation in Ekurhuleni. Now, apparently, as you'll know, Ekurhuleni is the only major metro without a university. Now, a feasibility study was completed in 2021. A site was selected for the university in Boksburg, and construction was intended to begin in 2025. That was last year. Now, many individuals have actually visited the site in 2026 and found no clearing and no construction. The site was in disrepair with no functional infrastructure, and the Ekurhuleni municipality did not respond to media queries by publications. This is what the ANC delivers. So let's treat the private sector with condemnation. When it comes through to the public sector, this is what we deliver. Nothing. We deliver broken promises and looted fiscus. That's it. People in the government get to treat the private sector with complete disdain, all whilst they deliver nothing to the public. And then when they're questioned, well, then they're the victim. Because in other news, an individual who is the mayor of the Chris Hani district has been asked to step aside. Now, this decision to ask this individual to step aside was followed by his sick court appearance linked to the theft of his firearm. Now, his firearm was stolen from a car driven by his protector, that's his private security, in March 2025. Now, the ANC's Provincial Integrity Commission recommended that he step aside, but he says that he was a victim of crime and denies wrongdoing. He asked the ANC PEC to reconsider his decision and questioned the timing of the decision to ask him to step aside ahead of the provincial conference. Now, ANC sources are suggesting that he's been asked to step aside because he's aligned with a faction which is aligned to a different provincial chairperson. This is what we're left with. Like, the Eastern Cape, the Chris Hani district, is a shithole. Most of the country is a shithole. And it's all because of the way the ANC treats the country. And they're all busy crying victimhood and fighting their own little election battles so that they can take positions that they can loot from. This is the ANC for you. Who's voting for these idiots? I really hope that at some point in time, the average person in the Republic realizes just how retarded this government is. And once they're out, we really need to have a truth and reconciliation. Go back and charge every ANC minister. And maybe, just maybe, we should also think about reintroducing guillotines. Just my suggestion. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until next time, bye.